The giant spaceship moved slowly through the dark space between stars. Its name was the Sovereign's Grace, and it was bigger than 3 city blocks put together. Golden lights ran along its sides like glowing rivers. This was not a human ship. It belonged to the Zeridians, a race of tall reptile-like beings who ruled 17 different star systems. Inside the ship's grand dining hall, Captain Lisa Rodriguez sat at a long table made of polished metal. She wore her best blue uniform with shiny gold buttons. Next to her sat Sam Parker, a diplomat who talked for Earth's government. Both humans looked small compared to the tall Zeridians around them. At the head of the table sat Empress Vexitara. She was 9 feet tall with scales that changed colors like a rainbow. Right now her scales were deep blue, which meant she was calm and thinking. Her large yellow eyes watched everything in the room. She wore a crown made of crystals that sparkled in the light. The Empress was trying to make a deal with the humans. Earth needed permission to build space stations in the Outer Rim territories. The Zeridians controlled those areas. If they said yes, humans could expand into new parts of space. If they said no, Earth would stay trapped in their small corner of the galaxy. Near the back of the room stood Jake Sullivan. He was 42 years old and worked as a maintenance engineer. His job was to fix broken things on spaceships. Jake was not important like the captain or the diplomat. He was just there to make sure the human ship kept working during the long trip. Jake was a quiet man with gray hair and tired brown eyes. He never spoke much, but he always watched and listened. While the others talked about trade and politics, Jake looked around the room. He noticed how the lights worked, how the air moved, and how the Zeridian technology was different from human machines. The Empress had a daughter named Princess Kylina. She was only 6 years old, which was young even for a Zeridian. The little princess had bright green scales and large curious eyes like her mother. She sat in a special small chair next to the Empress, trying to be good during the boring adult meeting. In her small hands, Kylina held her most precious thing in the whole universe. It was a music box made of special crystals. The box was about the size of a human book, but it was clear like glass and sparkled with inner light. When she touched it gently, it played beautiful songs from her father's home planet. Princess Kylina's father had died 2 years ago in a war with space pirates. Before he died, he gave her the music box. He told her that whenever she missed him, she should play it and remember that he loved her. The music box was the only thing she had left of her daddy. The formal dinner was almost over. Zeridian servants brought out the last course, which looked like floating purple soup in crystal bowls. The humans tried to eat it politely, even though it tasted strange. Everyone was being very careful to show respect. Captain Rodriguez was explaining why humans would be good partners for the Zeridian Empire. "We are peaceful people," she said through a translation device. "We only want to explore and learn. We will not cause trouble in your territories." Empress Vexitara nodded slowly. Her scales shifted to light purple, which meant she was interested but not yet convinced. "Humans are still young as a species," she said in her deep voice. "How do we know you will keep your promises?" Sam Parker leaned forward. "Your Majesty, we have kept every agreement we have made with other alien races. Earth's word is our bond. We understand that trust must be earned." While the adults talked, Princess Kylina was getting bored. She had been sitting still for over an hour, which was very hard for a 6-year-old. She started to fidget with her music box, turning it over in her small hands. The music box was very old and very delicate. It had been in her father's family for hundreds of years. The crystals that made the music were grown in special caves on a distant planet. They could not be replaced if they broke. Jake noticed the little princess playing with her toy. He could see that she was being careful, but he also saw how old and fragile the music box looked. The crystals had tiny cracks from age. Jake felt a little worried, but he did not say anything. He was just a maintenance worker. It was not his place to speak. The conversation at the table was getting more serious. The Empress was asking hard questions about human military strength and expansion plans. Everyone was focused on the important negotiations. No one was watching the little princess except Jake. Kylina stood up from her chair to get a better look at something across the room. She was still holding her music box. As she turned, her small foot caught in the leg of her chair. She stumbled and tried to catch herself. The music box flew from her hands. Time seemed to slow down as Jake watched the precious crystal device fall through the air. He was too far away to catch it. Everyone else was still talking and did not see what was happening. The music box hit the hard metal floor with a terrible crash. The sound was like breaking glass mixed with dying bells. Beautiful crystal pieces scattered across the floor in every direction. The inner crystals that made the music shattered into tiny fragments that sparkled like fallen stars. The entire room went completely silent. Princess Kylina stared at the broken pieces of her most precious possession. Her green scales started to turn dark gray, which meant she was very sad. Her large eyes filled with tears. Then she began to cry. It was not the quiet crying of a polite princess. It was the heartbroken sobbing of a little girl who had just lost the last piece of her dead father. The sound filled the huge dining hall and echoed off the metal walls. It was the saddest sound Jake had ever heard. Empress Vexitara forgot all about the important meeting. Her scales flashed bright red with alarm as she jumped up from her chair. She rushed to her daughter and knelt down beside the broken music box. "Oh, my little star," the Empress whispered, gathering her crying daughter into her arms. "Oh no, oh no." The Empress's own scales began to change colors rapidly. Red for alarm, purple for sadness, gray for grief. She was the ruler of 17 star systems, but right now she was just a mother whose child was heartbroken. All the important Zeridian officials stared at the broken crystals on the floor. No one knew what to do. The music box was made with ancient technology that no one understood anymore. The special crystals came from a planet that had been destroyed in the war. Captain Rodriguez and Sam Parker looked at each other with worry. They could see that this was very bad. The little princess was crying harder now, and the Empress was crying too. The whole trade deal might be ruined because of this accident. Jake slowly walked closer to look at the broken pieces. His engineer's mind was already working, trying to understand how the device had functioned, but his heart ached as he watched the little girl cry for her lost connection to her father. The meeting was over. There would be no more talk of trade agreements today. Maybe there would never be any agreement at all. The humans had brought bad luck to the royal family. As the Zeridians began to leave the dining hall, Jake knelt down and carefully began collecting the crystal fragments. He did not know if anything could be done, but he could not just leave them scattered on the floor like garbage. Princess Kylina's tears continued to fall as her mother carried her away. The sound of her crying seemed to follow the humans all the way back to their guest quarters. Jake sat alone in the empty dining hall, surrounded by pieces of a broken dream. Jake Sullivan sat in his small room on the human guest deck. The room was simple, with gray walls, a narrow bed, and a small desk. In front of him on the desk were dozens of crystal fragments from Princess Kylina's broken music box. He had spent 2 hours carefully collecting every piece he could find. Each crystal fragment was different. Some were clear like glass. Others had colors that changed when he moved them in the light. A few pieces still hummed softly when he touched them together. Jake used a small magnifying glass to study the broken pieces. His engineer's mind was fascinated by the alien technology. Down the hall, Captain Rodriguez and Sam Parker were having an emergency meeting. Jake could hear their worried voices through the thin walls. "This is a disaster," Sam Parker said, pacing back and forth. "The Empress won't even see us now. She's too upset about her daughter." Captain Rodriguez sighed. "I've been in contact with Earth Command. They say we have to fix this somehow, or the whole expansion program is dead. But how do you fix something like this? We don't understand Zeridian technology." "Maybe we should just go home," Sam said sadly. "We've lost our chance." Jake listened to their conversation while continuing to examine the crystals. He found something interesting. The main crystal chamber in the center was cracked, but not completely broken. The smaller crystals around it were shattered, but the core was still in one piece. The next morning, Jake walked quietly through the ship's corridors. He was looking for the ship's library computer. He wanted to learn more about Zeridian crystal technology. Most of the information was restricted, but he found some basic facts. Ziridian music crystals were grown in special caves with high magnetic fields. The crystals could store sound waves and replay them with perfect clarity. The most advanced ones could even create three-dimensional sound pictures in the air. The technology was thousands of years old, and much of the knowledge had been lost. Jake also learned that Princess Kylina's music box was not just any toy. It was a memory keeper, a device that recorded not just sounds, but emotional connections. When her father spoke into it, the crystals captured not only his voice but also his feelings of love for his daughter. While Jake was researching, the situation on the ship was getting worse. Princess Kylina had not stopped crying since yesterday. She would not eat or sleep. She just sat in her room holding the broken pieces of her music box and sobbing. Empress Vexitara was falling apart too. Her scales had turned a dull gray color, and stayed that way. She could not concentrate on her duties as ruler. The other Ziridian nobles were starting to worry. Some of them whispered that the humans had brought bad luck to the royal family. Dr. Helen Carter, the human cultural advisor, came to find Jake in the library. She was a tall woman with short black hair and kind eyes. She had studied alien cultures for 20 years. "Jake," she said quietly, "I've been talking to the Ziridian court officials. They think this accident is a bad sign. Some of them want to cancel all agreements with humans forever." Jake looked up from the computer screen. "What about the princess? Is she okay?" Helen shook her head. "She's getting worse. The royal doctor says she's making herself sick from crying so much. And the Empress, she's not thinking clearly anymore. She's talking about ending all contact with Earth." "Can't anyone fix the music box?" Jake asked. "That's just it," Helen said. "The crystals came from a planet called Morthek. It was destroyed in the war 2 years ago. The same war where the princess's father died. There are no more crystals like these in the entire galaxy." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "What if someone could fix it using different crystals? Or maybe combine the old crystals with new technology?" Helen looked surprised. "Jake, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? You're a maintenance engineer, not a crystal expert. This is way beyond human technology." "Maybe," Jake said simply. "But I've been looking at the pieces. The core crystal is still good. And I have some ideas." That afternoon, Jake did something that went against all the rules. He left the human guest area and walked to the royal section of the ship. The Ziridian guards were surprised to see him. Humans were not supposed to be in this area without permission. "I need to see the Empress," Jake told the guards through his translation device. The guards looked at each other. One of them was named Commander Zeltar. He was 8 feet tall with dark red scales and fierce yellow eyes. "Human, you cannot be here. Return to your area immediately." "Please," Jake said quietly. "It's about the princess's music box. I might be able to help." Commander Zeltar laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. "You? A small human wants to fix something that our best engineers cannot repair? Go away before I have you arrested." Jake did not leave. He stood there calmly and took out one of the crystal fragments from his pocket. He held it up so the commander could see it. The fragment began to glow softly in Jake's hand. The commander stopped laughing. "How did you do that?" "The crystal still works," Jake said. "It just needs the right kind of energy to make it sing again." Word spread quickly through the royal section that the quiet human engineer had made one of the broken crystals glow. Soon a crowd of curious Ziridians gathered to see what Jake could do. Empress Vextera heard about the commotion and came to see for herself. She looked terrible. Her beautiful scales were dull and gray. Her eyes were red from crying. She moved like she was very tired. "What is this human doing in the royal section?" she asked weakly. Commander Zeltar bowed to his Empress. "Your Majesty, he claims he can help repair the princess's music box. He made one of the crystals glow." The Empress looked at Jake with sad, hopeless eyes. "Many of our finest engineers have examined the broken pieces. They all say the same thing. It cannot be repaired. The crystals from Morthek cannot be replaced." Jake stepped forward carefully. He knew he had to be very respectful. "Your Majesty, I know I am just a human maintenance worker, but I have studied your crystals. I think there might be a way to make them work again." How? The Empress asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Jake took out his small bag of crystal fragments. The core crystal is not broken. It's cracked, but the main structure is still good. If I could support it with human technology and connect it to new harmonic crystals, it might work. The Empress stared at the bag of broken pieces. These were all that remained of her daughter's connection to her dead father. If you try and fail, the crystals might be destroyed completely. I understand, Jake said. But right now they don't work at all, and your daughter is very sad. For a long moment, the Empress said nothing. All the Zeridian nobles watched and waited. Finally, she spoke. Why would you want to help us? We are not the same species. This is not your problem. Jake thought about this question. He looked around at all the tall, scary-looking aliens surrounding him. Then he thought about Princess Kylina crying in her room. Because she's just a little girl who misses her daddy, he said simply. And if I can fix something that will make her feel better, then I should try. The Empress's scales flickered with a tiny bit of color for the first time in 2 days. She looked at this small, quiet human who wanted to help her daughter, for no reason except kindness. Very well, she said finally. You may try. But you will work under guard, and if you damage the crystals further, there will be consequences. Jake nodded. I understand, Your Majesty. I'll need some tools and materials, and maybe someone to help translate technical terms. Dr. Helen Carter stepped forward. I can help with translation, Your Majesty. As Jake was led to a workshop area, he could hear Princess Kylina crying somewhere in the royal quarters. The sound made his heart ache. He had no idea if his plan would work, but he had to try. The little girl needed her music box back, and Jake Sullivan, the quiet maintenance engineer, was going to do everything he could to make that happen. The Zeridian workshop was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The walls were made of smooth silver metal that seemed to glow from within. Strange tools hung from magnetic strips. Some looked like tiny lightning bolts frozen in crystal. Others hummed with soft energy. Work tables floated in the air at exactly the right height for tall Zeridian engineers. Jake stood in the middle of this alien workshop feeling very small. Commander Zeltar watched him with suspicious red eyes. 2 other guards stood by the door. Dr. Helen Carter sat at a side table with a translation computer, ready to help Jake communicate with the Zeridian engineers. Show us what you plan to do, human, Commander Zeltar said in his deep, rumbling voice. Jake carefully placed Princess Kylina's broken music box pieces on the floating work table. Under the bright workshop lights, he could see the damage even more clearly. The outer crystal shell was completely shattered. The middle layer of harmonic crystals was broken into dozens of pieces. But the core crystal, the heart of the device, was still intact with just a few deep cracks. The core crystal still holds the recordings, Jake explained, pointing to the central piece. Your father's voice and songs are still in there, but the crystals that amplify and project the sound are destroyed. A Zeridian engineer named Corthan joined them. He was smaller than the guards, with bright blue scales and 3 eyes instead of 2. He was the ship's expert on crystal technology. He examined Jake's work with interest but doubt. Even if the core crystal works, Corthan said through Helen's translator, we cannot grow new Morthek crystals. That planet is gone forever. Without the proper resonance crystals, the device will not function. Jake nodded. You're right. We can't replace the Morthek crystals, but what if we don't try to copy the original design? What if we make something new that works with what we have? He pulled out a small device from his toolkit. It looked like a simple human computer chip, but it glowed with soft blue light. This is a harmonic frequency generator from our ship's communication system. It can produce any sound frequency we program into it. Corthan's 3 eyes blinked in surprise. You want to combine human technology with ancient Zeridian crystals? That should not work. The resonance patterns are completely different. Maybe, Jake said. But resonance is just vibration. Sound is sound. If I can match the frequency patterns. He trailed off, already lost in thought as he studied the broken pieces. For the next 6 hours, Jake worked steadily. He used human micro tools to carefully clean each crystal fragment. Helen helped him communicate with Corthan about Ziridian crystal theory. Slowly, Jake began to understand how the original music box had functioned. The Morthek crystals did not just play sounds. They created three-dimensional sound sculptures in the air. Each crystal was tuned to a specific emotional frequency. When Princess Kylena's father recorded his voice, the crystals captured not just his words but the love in his voice. "It's like a hologram made of sound," Jake muttered to himself as he worked. Captain Rodriguez and Sam Parker came to check on his progress. They looked worried and tired. The trade negotiations had been completely suspended. Earth Command was demanding answers they could not give. "Any luck, Jake?" Captain Rodriguez asked. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. "Maybe. The core crystal is responding to electrical stimulation. I think I can wake it up. But rebuilding the amplification system, that's going to be tricky." Sam Parker looked at the scattered crystal pieces. "Jake, I know you want to help, but maybe this is impossible. We should start thinking about damage control." "Not yet," Jake said quietly. "Give me more time." As night fell on the ship, Jake continued working. The Ziridian guards changed shifts, but Commander Zeltar stayed to watch. Even he seemed curious about what the human engineer was trying to do. Jake had connected the core crystal to his human frequency generator. Slowly, carefully, he began sending test signals into the ancient crystal. At first, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the crystal began to glow. A faint sound came from the crystal. Just a whisper, but it was definitely a voice. Princess Kylena's father's voice, recorded years ago when he gave her the music box. Commander Zeltar's scales changed to bright yellow with amazement. Even Corthan's 3 eyes widened with surprise. The dead crystal was singing again. "The recording is still there," Jake said with excitement. "Now I just need to amplify it and create the sound projection system." But this was the hardest part. Jake did not have Morthek crystals. He had to create something entirely new using human technology and the few Ziridian crystal fragments that were still usable. He worked through the night. Dr. Amy Foster, the expedition's biologist, brought him food and coffee. She also helped him understand how Ziridian hearing worked, which was different from human hearing. Chris Young, the ship's navigation officer, contributed some microcircuits from the ship's computer systems. Even Beth Turner, the usually stern security chief, found herself interested in Jake's work. "Never thought I'd see human tech mixed with alien crystals," she admitted. Jake's approach was completely different from the original design. Instead of using many large crystals, he created a network of tiny human circuits connected to small fragments of the original crystals. Each fragment still carried some of the original resonance patterns. By dawn, Jake had built something that looked nothing like the original music box. It was a hybrid device, part ancient Ziridian crystal, part modern human electronics. The core crystal sat in the center, surrounded by a web of tiny circuits and small crystal fragments. "It looks like a spider made of lightning," Helen observed. Jake was exhausted but determined. His hands shook as he made the final connections. Commander Zeltar and the other Ziridians watched silently. Even more Ziridians had come to see what the human was doing. Word had spread throughout the ship that something impossible was happening in the workshop. "Are you ready to test it?" Corthan asked. Jake took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." He activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the core crystal began to glow brighter and brighter. The human circuit sparkled with electricity. The small crystal fragments started to vibrate and sing. Music filled the workshop. But it was not just music. It was Princess Kylena's father's voice, singing a lullaby in the ancient Ziridian language. His voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, surrounding them with warmth and love. The sound created shapes in the air, glowing patterns that danced and swirled like living light. Everyone in the workshop stood perfectly still. Even the guards forgot to look threatening. The music was beautiful beyond description. But more than that, they could feel the love in the voice, a father singing to his little daughter, promising to always watch over her. Commander Zeltar's scales turned bright gold, which meant he was feeling deep emotion. Tears ran down Corthin's face from all three of his eyes. When the song ended, the workshop was silent for a long time. "It works," Jake said simply. "It's different from the original, but it works." Corthin examined the hybrid device with wonder. This should not be possible. Human technology and Zeridian crystals operate on completely different principles. How did you make them work together? Jake shrugged tiredly. Sometimes different things can work together if you find the right connection. The crystals wanted to sing. The human circuits helped them remember how. The device was not exactly the same as the original music box. The songs sounded slightly different, with new harmonies created by the human electronics. The light patterns were different too, more complex and beautiful in their own way. "Will the princess accept it?" Jake asked. "It's not the same as what her father gave her." Commander Zeltar's scales shifted to thoughtful purple. "She will have to decide for herself. But you have done something remarkable, human. You have brought her father's voice back from the dead." As they prepared to take the repaired device to Princess Kylina, Jake felt nervous. He had worked for 18 hours straight. His eyes were red with tiredness. His hands were stained with crystal dust and circuit oil. But he had done everything he could. The little princess had been crying for 2 days. Soon they would know if Jake's repair could bring her comfort. The hybrid music box hummed softly in his tired hands, ready to sing again. Princess Kylina's room was the saddest place Jake had ever seen. The little girl sat curled up on her large bed, surrounded by soft pillows and blankets, but nothing could comfort her. Her bright green scales had turned dull gray from crying. Her large eyes were red and swollen. In her small hands, she clutched the biggest piece of her broken music box, a fragment that no longer made any sound. Empress Vextara sat beside her daughter's bed, looking just as heartbroken. The mighty ruler who commanded 17 star systems was helpless when faced with her child's grief. Her own scales flickered between gray and deep purple as she tried to think of ways to help. "My little star, you must try to eat something," the Empress whispered gently. Princess Kylina shook her head and continued staring at the broken crystal piece. "I want Daddy's voice back," she said in a tiny broken voice. "I want to hear him sing to me." Jake stood in the doorway holding his repaired device. It looked very different from the original music box. Where the old one had been smooth and elegant, his version was clearly made from mixed parts. Human circuits wrapped around crystal fragments. Small lights blinked on the surface. It looked like something a clever engineer had built in his workshop, which was exactly what it was. Commander Zeltar spoke quietly to the Empress. "Your Majesty, the human engineer has rebuilt the music box. It is different, but it works. We heard your husband's voice singing." The Empress looked up with the first hope she had felt in 2 days. Her scales brightened just a little. "Is this true?" Jake stepped forward carefully. He felt nervous being in the princess's room with so many important Zeridians watching him. "Your Majesty, I was able to save the core crystal. Your husband's recordings are still there, but I had to build a new system to play them. It doesn't look the same, but..." "Show me," the Empress said immediately. Jake activated the device. The workshop had been quiet and controlled, but here in the princess's room, surrounded by her toys and pictures, the music seemed even more magical. Princess Kylina's father's voice filled the room, singing the same lullaby Jake had heard in the workshop. But here, in his daughter's bedroom, the song seemed to come alive. The sound waves created gentle lights that danced around the ceiling like friendly stars. The melody wrapped around them like a warm hug. Princess Kylina dropped the broken crystal fragment she had been holding. Her dull gray scales began to shift to lighter colors. She sat up straighter, her mouth open in wonder. "Daddy?" she whispered. The lullaby continued, and with it came her father's voice speaking between the verses. "My precious little star, Daddy loves you so much. When you hear this song, remember that I am always watching over you from the stars." Tears ran down Princess Kalina's face, but these were different tears. These were tears of joy and relief, not heartbreak. For the first time in 2 days, she smiled. "Daddy is singing to me again," she said, her voice full of wonder. Empress Vextara was crying too. Her scales had turned bright gold, the color of deep happiness and gratitude. She looked at Jake with amazement and something else. Respect. When the song ended, Princess Kalina immediately reached for the device. "Play it again, please play Daddy's voice again." Jake showed her how to activate the music box. It was easier to use than the original because he had added simple human controls. The little princess quickly learned how to start and stop the music, how to choose different recordings, and how to adjust the volume. "It's different from my old music box," she said, examining the mixed human and Zeridian technology with curious eyes. "Yes," Jake admitted. "I'm sorry I couldn't make it exactly the same. I had to use different parts." Princess Kalina looked up at him with her large, intelligent eyes. She tilted her head the way children do when they are thinking about something important. "Why did you fix it for me?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Jake knelt down so he was at her eye level. The question was simple, but it made him think. Why had he spent 18 hours working on a broken toy for an alien child he had never met? "Because you were sad," he said finally, "and no little girl should be sad if someone can fix it." Princess Kalina stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised everyone in the room. She hugged him. Jake was not used to being hugged by anyone, especially not by alien princesses. But her small arms around his neck felt warm and genuine. He could feel her gratitude and trust. "Thank you," she whispered in his ear. "Thank you for bringing Daddy back." Empress Vextara watched this scene with growing amazement. In Zeridian culture, physical contact between different species was very rare. It happened only between the closest friends or family members. For her daughter to hug this human meant she truly trusted him. But there was something else that amazed the Empress even more. Jake had not just repaired the music box, he had improved it. The new version played the original songs, but it also had new harmonics created by the human technology. The songs were somehow richer and more beautiful than before. "How is this possible?" she asked Jake. "The songs sound better than they did originally." Jake looked embarrassed. "The human circuits add some resonance frequencies that weren't in the original design. I tried to remove them, but Princess Kalina's father's voice seemed to blend with them naturally. It was like the human and Zeridian technology wanted to work together." Dr. Helen Carter, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Your Majesty, what Jake has created here is completely new. This is the first successful fusion of human and Zeridian technology that anyone has ever achieved." The Empress studied the hybrid device more carefully. She was not just a mother. She was also a ruler who understood the importance of technology and innovation. What Jake had built could change everything. "You expected nothing in return for this work?" she said to Jake. Jake shrugged. "I just wanted to help." She was crying, and I thought maybe I could fix what was broken. "But you are not Zeridian. She is not your child. You gain nothing by helping her." Jake looked confused, as if the Empress was asking why water was wet. "She's a little girl who lost something important. Of course I wanted to help." This simple statement hit the Empress like a thunderbolt. In her experience, members of different species only helped each other when they wanted something in return. Trade deals, military alliances, political advantages. There was always a reason. But this quiet human engineer had worked for 18 hours straight, risking failure and embarrassment, simply because a child from another species was sad. He had not asked for payment, recognition, or political favor. He had helped because it was the right thing to do. Princess Kalina was now playing with her repaired music box, laughing as the dancing lights created pictures in the air. Her scales had returned to their normal bright green color. She was happy. "Again." "Jake," she said, "will you stay and listen to Daddy's songs with me?" Jake looked around the room. Empress Vextara nodded her permission. Commander Zeltar and the guards no longer looked suspicious. They looked respectful. Even the other Zeridian nobles who had gathered to watch were regarding him with new eyes. "I would be honored, Princess," Jake said. As they listened to the songs together, the Empress made a decision that would change the relationship between humans and Zeridians forever. Any species that could produce individuals like Jake Sullivan, beings who helped others without expecting anything in return, were not just potential trade partners. They were friends. The music box played softly as Princess Kelina fell asleep, for the first time in 2 days, finally comforted by her father's voice. But the harmonics created by the fusion of human and Zeridian technology seemed to sing of more than just one man's love for his daughter. They sang of the possibility that different species like different technologies could work together to create something more beautiful than either could achieve alone. 3 days later, the grand dining hall of the Sovereign's Grace looked completely different. The same long metal table was there, the same floating lights, the same crystal decorations. But the feeling in the room had changed completely. Princess Kelina sat next to her mother, no longer sad and quiet. Her bright green scales sparkled with health and happiness. On the table in front of her sat Jake's repaired music box, softly playing gentle melodies that filled the air with dancing lights. Empress Vexitara looked like a completely different person. Her scales were bright gold and blue, colors that meant joy and excitement. She was no longer the heartbroken mother from 3 days ago. She was the powerful ruler of 17 star systems. But now she was also something else, Earth's strongest supporter. Captain Rodriguez and Sam Parker sat across from the royal family, but they were no longer worried about failed negotiations. The documents in front of them were not just trade agreements anymore. They were planning something much bigger and more important. Jake sat near the end of the table, still looking uncomfortable with all the attention. He wore his best uniform, but he kept trying to fade into the background. He was not used to being the center of important meetings. "The cultural exchange program will begin immediately," Empress Vextara announced to the assembled Zeridian and human officials. "Engineer Sullivan will remain here for 3 months to teach our scientists about hybrid technology integration." Jake's eyes went wide. "Your Majesty, I'm just a maintenance worker. I don't know about teaching scientists." Commander Zeltar, who now treated Jake with great respect, laughed. "Human friend, you have done what our best engineer said was impossible. You have much to teach us about seeing solutions where others see only problems." Dr. Helen Carter leaned forward. "Jake, what you've accomplished isn't just fixing a toy. You've proven that human and Zeridian technology can work together. Do you understand how important that is?" Jake honestly did not fully understand. To him, he had just fixed a broken music box for a sad little girl. But everyone else was treating it like he had changed the history of 2 species. Corthen, the Zeridian crystal expert, was especially excited. "The resonance patterns you created should not exist according to our science. But they do exist and they are beautiful. We must learn how you made different technologies sing in harmony." Princess Kelina had been listening to the adult conversation with the patience of a well-behaved 6-year-old. But now she had something important to say. "Jake," she said in her small but clear voice, "you made Daddy's songs even prettier than before. How did you do that?" Jake thought about her question seriously. It was actually a very good question. "Well, Princess, your daddy's voice was perfect already. But when I mixed it with human technology, it was like adding new instruments to a band. The song was still the same, but it had new parts that made it richer. Like when I sing with Mommy and our voices sound better together than alone." "Exactly like that," Jake said, smiling. Empress Vextara watched this exchange with deep interest. Her daughter had just understood something that many adults struggled with. Different things working together could create something more beautiful than either could make alone. "This is why we are not just making a trade agreement," the Empress announced. "We are making a friendship pact. Any species that teaches children to help others without expecting rewards is a species the Zeridian Empire wants as permanent allies." Parker could hardly believe what he was hearing. 3 days ago, they had been facing complete failure. Now they were being offered something better than they had ever hoped for. A true partnership with one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. "Your Majesty," he said carefully. Earth is honored by your friendship. But I want to make sure you understand. Jake is not unusual among humans. Most of our people would have tried to help Princess Kalina if they could. This statement seemed to impress the Empress even more. You mean there are many humans like Engineer Sullivan? Captain Rodriguez nodded. Jake represents the best of humanity, but he's not unique. We teach our children that helping others is always the right thing to do, even when it's difficult. Princess Kylina tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mommy, can Jake come visit us again after he goes home? I want to show him my other toys. Maybe some of them are broken too. Everyone in the room laughed, but it was warm, happy laughter. The little princess had no idea that her innocent question was actually about establishing regular diplomatic visits between Earth and the Zeridian Empire. I think that can be arranged, my little star, the Empress said, stroking her daughter's head gently. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. Actually, Princess, I have something for you before I start my teaching work here. Princess Kylina's eyes lit up with excitement. She carefully unwrapped the package to find a small, simple music box from Earth. It was made of wood and metal, nothing like the advanced crystal technology of her repaired Zeridian device. It's from my home planet, Jake explained. It plays songs from Earth. I thought maybe you could play both music boxes together sometimes. Princess Kylina immediately activated both devices. Her father's voice from the crystal music box mixed with a simple Earth lullaby from Jake's wooden box. The two songs should have clashed. They were from completely different worlds, different species, different technologies. Instead, they created something magical. The Zeridian crystals somehow found harmony with the Earth music. The dancing lights in the air became more complex and beautiful. The song seemed to tell a story about friendship across the stars. They like each other, Princess Kylina said with delight. The songs want to be friends. Empress Vexistara looked at Jake with something close to awe. You continue to amaze us, Engineer Sullivan. How did you know they would harmonize? Jake looked a little embarrassed. I didn't know for sure, but music is a universal language. Love is universal too. I thought maybe they would find a way to work together. Commander Zeltar stood up and bowed to Jake in the formal Zeridian way. Human friend, you have taught us something more valuable than technology. You have taught us that the best solutions come not from force or cleverness, but from kindness. The formal ceremonies continued for another hour. Documents were signed, agreements were made, and plans were established. But the real agreement had already been made 3 days ago when a quiet maintenance engineer decided to help a crying little girl. As the meeting ended, Princess Kylina walked over to Jake. She was carrying both music boxes carefully in her small arms. Jake, she said seriously, when you go back to Earth someday, will you remember me? Jake knelt down to her level. Princess, I will never forget you. You taught me that fixing something broken can make it even more beautiful than it was before. How did I teach you that? Because you were brave enough to let me try to fix your music box even when everyone said it was impossible. You trusted me to help you, and that made me want to work harder than I ever had before. Princess Kylina hugged him again. You're my best human friend, Jake. You're my best Zeridian friend too, Princess. 6 months later, the first joint human Zeridian research station was completed in the Outer Rim. It was staffed by engineers from both species, working together to develop new hybrid technologies. The station's name was written in both human, English and Zeridian crystal script, Harmony Station. Jake Sullivan, now Earth's official ambassador of engineering exchange, stood in the station's main laboratory watching human and Zeridian engineers work side by side. They were designing everything from faster starships to better communication systems. All of their work was based on the same principle Jake had discovered while fixing a broken toy. Different technologies could work together to create something better than either could achieve alone. On his desk sat 2 music boxes, one Zeridian, one human, playing softly together while lights danced in the air above them. Sometimes Princess Kylina would call him on the communication system just to hear the songs and remember the day a quiet engineer taught 2 species how to be friends. The harmony between the two music boxes had become a symbol throughout both human and Zeridian space. It reminded everyone that the universe was big enough for different species, different technologies, and different ways of thinking to work together. And it all started because one man believed that no little girl should cry when someone could fix what was broken. In the end, Jake Sullivan learned that the most important thing he ever repaired was not a music box at all. It was the broken trust between two species who discovered that kindness, like music, truly is a universal language.